Now, welcome back to another episode of the GCN Tech Clinic, where I do my very best to help you get your bike rolling again as fast as possible out there on the roads. So remember as well to leave me your questions down there in the comments below. Let's crack on then, shall we, with the first question this week from Willem Neerhorster, who says, the neutral cars during the Tour de France have extra wheels. Does it matter if a rider is using Campagnolo, Shimano or Sram? Or do they have specific wheels for all group sets? How about gear ratios? Are these agreed beforehand depending on the stage? Hi Willem, great to hear from you. Well, let's tackle first of all the 11 speed situation, shall we? All different group sets there with 11 speeds, so Campagnolo, Sram and Shimano are all compatible with one another in the cassette area because the spacings are virtually the same. So it's absolutely fine to grab a wheel from someone who's using a different brand cassette, for instance. However, with those wheels from Mavic and their neutral service there at the Tour de France, they will be using, probably likely all using one type of cassette. And as for the ratios, probably just going to use the standard 11-28. Maybe if there's a really savage climb, then they may well put something a little bit lower, so like a 32 tooth sprocket on there, but more than likely they'll just stick with a 28. Reason being, if your derailleur is not adapted for that, it wouldn't work. So you get a wheel from the neutral service and be basically in the same situation. You'd be not able to go anywhere if it couldn't be accommodated by your rear derailleur. I hope that's answered your question. However, let's just look though, because Campagnolo have thrown a spanner in the works, haven't they? Because they launched a 12-speed group set. I haven't spotted any pros using it yet, so presumably the Mavic cars, well, they're not carrying those wheels because there's no demand for them. But I'm sure that next year, or possibly later on in the year, we will see some riders using that 12-speed. I'll keep you updated though, as and when we do see it. Next up is a question from Carved Top, who asks, they recently purchased a new Giant Defy Advanced Pro without Di2 shifting, and their thought is to upgrade to electronic at a later date. When they decide to upgrade, do they have to stick with Shimano, or can they use Sram E-Tap as well? Well, you could use Sram E-Tap as well, but you are going to also need to change your disc calipers on there too. The reason being, Shimano and Sram, they're not compatible with one another because they do in fact use different fluids to control those disc calipers. So the best thing, if I were you, if I was in your shoes, your cycling shoes, I would actually buy those Shimano electronic derailleurs and shifters. That way you're going to save a little bit of cash without having to buy those disc rotors. Right, now we've got a question from Usama Usman, who says, should I keep riding on my 19C tyres or swap the rims and tyres for 25C? That's a great question. You've not mentioned about where you ride and that kind of thing. So if you're riding on a velodrome, stick to those 19Cs, whack them up to 160 PSI minimum and you'll be fine. However, if you're riding on the road, I would probably change for a slightly wider pair of tyres and also rims as well to accommodate them if needed. Reason being, you are going to get a lot more comfort by using either a 23 or a 25mm wide tyre, and also you're not going to have to use quite as much pressure in there too for that comfort. So yeah, just listen to those words of advice there. On the track, stick with 19C. On the road, go 23 or 25. I went to 25 a couple of years ago and I've never looked back. Absolutely love them. Now, a question from Hugues Quebecois. Love the show, great job. Thank you very much. Shimano have announced a new rear mech, the Ultegra RX clutch rear derailleur. I have R505 hydraulic disc levers on my slate. Will these be compatible? So just to refresh everyone, Shimano have launched a clutch style rear derailleur for road bikes, which is really quite welcomed, if I'm perfectly honest, because it's been a long time coming. Now the good news is those levers are 11-speed compatible. You know, they're 11-speed, and so is that rear derailleur. So yeah, it will work absolutely fine on that slate of yours, Cannondale slate, I believe. Now for perfect, you know, one by shifting, go for a narrow wide chainring on there too. Now if you're using a double chain set, obviously just go ahead and carry on using it. But yeah, it'll work absolutely fine. Now, Richard Kendrick has got a clicky problem. They got some new wheels and one of them, probably the front, is making a clicky noise. It seems to be timed at 1 click per revolution. What could be causing it and how do they stop it? So Richard, annoying clicks are just absolutely terrible. And as you say, they're a brand new pair of wheels, so I doubt it's anything, you know, really severe with the bearings and such like. However, one thing to check, and which plagues most deep section wheels out there, is in fact the valve ticking on the carbon valve hole. So make sure that basically where the valve is popping through the rim, use some insulation tape and wrap it around there nice and tight so that valve doesn't have any movement, or certainly nothing enough to make it click. And now for a really pro tip on that, get yourself some heat shrink and put that over the valve and then heat it up. And that way you're going to be nice and click free riding, or at least I hope so. Another thing, only in the worst case scenario and with very poor quality control, it could well be a spoke nipple which has got inside of the rim somehow, but I very much doubt that is the case. I reckon it's your valve. Let me know how you get on with it. Now we have another rattly problem, this time from Mike Henry, who says, can you help with rattling cables that are fully internal? The housing as well, so that's not just the internal cable, it's also the outer cable, rattling a bit like that noise. Both his derailleur and brakes on his bike. Well, Mike, a rattly bike is enough to absolutely drive you wild, like I've already mentioned. Now, I've had a bike in the past with rattly internal cables, and I solved it. And this is how. There's two different ways. Some of it could be getting some of that pipe lagging, so that insulation, the sort of thing you would pack a bike with before flying, or also around your pipes, stop them freezing in the winter. Cut that up into strips and put it inside of the frame tubes. Yeah, sounds a little bit daft, but it does stop the rattles. The other one is by using some of that bubble wrap. So again, you can cut that up and you can basically just stuff it into the frame, and it doesn't hold water, nothing like that. And importantly, it's really lightweight, and that stops rattles. I reckon you're gonna be rattle free now. Let me know how you get on with that one, Mike. Right, next up is a question from Louis, who says their bike has Ultegra Di2 transmission and they're thinking of buying a new set of wheels. Now, if they want to have a different cassette, so an 1128 instead of 1125, do they need to make any adjustment in the Di2 system? If so, how do I do it? Well, Louis, you aren't going to actually need to adjust any of that indexing at all, really, providing the overlock nut distance is the same on both pairs of wheels, which it's going to be. It's going to be 130 mil on those road wheels. You shouldn't, at least I hope not, have to even touch that B tension screw on the rear derailleur. So that in fact sets basically the position of the upper pulley wheel and how far away it is from the cassette. In most cases, you won't have to touch it, but sometimes a couple of turns of that screw and it should place the rear derailleur just a little bit lower down. Now you will possibly need to get a slightly longer chain or add a few links in to accommodate that 28 tooth sprocket. But yeah, you'll be all good to go. Let me know how you get on with that one, Louis. Good luck, mate. And next up is a question from Max E. Million. They've got a 105 group set with disc brakes. When they shift to a higher gear, their cassette keeps making this periodic rattling noise, like it's rubbing or something. How can they fix it? Has it got anything to do with indexing the gears? Right, well, first up, I'd actually try and get the rear wheel off of the ground, so in a work stand, and gently pedal around in that gear, basically where you're getting that rattling, and look very closely to make sure that the chain is not rubbing on the derailleur cage, or if you're cross-chaining perhaps, and also that the indexing is fine, so that basically the chain on the rear cassette is not touching on any other sprocket. If it is, it could well be solved by cable tension. Worst case scenario is that your derailleur hanger is become out of alignment, and without a special tool, so the derailleur alignment gauge, you're not able to actually adjust that yourself without, well, hacking or bodging it. And lastly, do check to make sure that the lock ring of your cassette is done up nice and tight, because they can come loose sometimes if they're not tightened up fully to start with. Good luck. Let me know how you get on, mate. Now, next up is a question from Marcos the Great. That's a statement. Is it normal for the drivetrain to be louder when using dry lube as opposed to wet lube? Well, I guess it could be, because generally a dry lube, the fluid isn't quite as thick consistency, so it's not as gloopy basically as that as a wet lube. However, I don't really have a scientific answer for you, but I did in fact learn last year that a noisy drivetrain isn't necessarily a bad thing, providing of course you are in fact using a decent lubricant to start with. The reason being, the rollers and pins of that chain are able to work probably more effectively, and that noise is basically the chain working more efficiently. Now, providing, like I say, you are using a good quality lubricant and your gears are set up fine, so there's no rubbing there, no indexing issues, Yeah, but I don't really know the answer, I'm afraid, if either of them make a chain louder or quieter. Final question this week is from Maniac Sharma, who says, while cleaning the bike, they're concerned if they accidentally apply degreaser to a part where they shouldn't. Please tell me the parts where the degreaser shouldn't be applied at all. Right, well, it's easier to tell you where you should apply it than shouldn't. So really just put it on your drivetrain. So your cassette, your chain rings, your pulley wheels, and also your chain. Anywhere else on the bike doesn't really need it because you don't have that build up. Also, go pretty careful when applying it, so don't go spraying it if it's on an aerosol really wildly, just focus on those components. Keep it away, importantly, from your bottom bracket, so don't go in hard on that. And also your cables, don't spray it near them because you don't want to wash out any of that grease or lubricant. You want them to be running super smooth. Now, I do hope that you've enjoyed this week's GCN Tech Clinic. Now, remember as well to let me know your questions. Leave them down there in the comment section below. Also, importantly, like and share this video with your friends, especially if they're plagued with mechanical issues, because hopefully we'll solve some of them for them too. Also, remember to check out the GCN shop at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. And now for another great video, this one, the latest GCN Tech Show, click just down here.